To find the origins of cricket in the Indian subcontinent, we need to go back in time. Further back, close enough. The very first mentions of a game that resembles cricket in India are found in the great Persian epic by Ferdowsi called the Shahnameh. It tells a story from the time of Alexander the Great and the Achaemenid dynasty in Persia, which was the Persian Empire. And yes, part of what we recall as the Indian subcontinent did overlap with the boundaries of this empire. Hi, my name is Misha and welcome to Tarihi Tales. As always, you will find references to my sources down in the description box, so go check them out. And at the same note, do subscribe and like and hit the notification bell. Really helps out. Thank you. Okay, so getting back to the Shahnameh. Now, story goes that Philip, the father of Alexander the Great, used to pay the Persians 1,000 gold eggs as tribute. As soon as Alexander came into power, he stopped paying those golden eggs. This obviously enraged the Persian king, Darius Kodomanis, and he at this time viewed Alexander as a little kid. He basically sent Alexander a message, and with the message, he sent a ball, a bat, and the seeds of sesamum, which is basically sesame seeds. Now, the accompanied letter said, "Thou art still a child, so play with this bat and ball, and the Persian army, innumerable as the seeds of sesamum, will invade Macedonia." For the sake of this video, we will ignore the invading part and let's focus on what the king actually sent: a bat and a ball, signaling that a game of similar nature basically existed in this area around 300 BC. The author of the Shahnameh actually calls this game Chaugan Gui. Chaugan means a bat, as well as the ground on which the game is played, and Gui means ball. Other historians point out that this game was played in Persia in later years as well, especially around the time of the Sasanian dynasty, which lasted from 224 to 651 CE. And here's a map of the dynasty in the late 200s, and we see that a considerable area of the global south was also a part of the Persian Empire. Hence, we can trace the roots back of this game again to Persia, which we were a part of then. Okay, so those were the ancient roots of cricket in India. The more modern form of the game re-emerges in the area when the British arrived. Initially, cricket was a purely British sport, and according to the British, it was a perfect sport for a gentleman. In their mind, it embodied many of the distinctive qualities that made them British. These included virtues of courage, endurance, self-discipline, selflessness, loyalty, and obedience to rules. Now, interestingly, the first Indian community to basically follow the lead of the Britishers and adopt this game, cricket, were the descendants of the ancient Persian Empire, the fire-worshipping Zoroastrians, the Parsees, and more specifically the Parsees in Bombay, now Mumbai. Now, to understand the beginnings of cricket in modern-day India, we first need to understand the Parsees of Bombay. So in the mid-18th century, the popularity of the Gujarati ports declined. So the Parsi population that was basically settled there started to make their way towards the newly established island city of Bombay, which at this time was under the East India Company. Here, the businesses of the Parsees flourished, and as their fortunes grew, so did their standing in the social fabric of the empire, and in turn, their connection with the British. During this time, a new class of educated Parsees also emerged, and with this came a new phenomenon, where Parsees started to fashion themselves after the British. This was evident in how they adopted Western attire, how they redecorated their homes in the European style, and they were more keen than any other community to adopt the English language as well. So given this infatuation, it's no surprise that they were also the first to start playing the game of cricket. Now, according to the accounts of Fremji Patel, Parsees playing cricket can be traced back to the late 1830s or the early 1840s, when the youth of the community was taught the basics of the game by a man called Mr. Boswell. Now, Mr. Boswell ran a school near Fort George, and that is where these kids started to learn cricket from him. But another account by Shapurji Sorabji offers an alternative history. He says that the Parsi boys on their own started to imitate these European soldiers and European people playing cricket in the Maidan of Fort George. And initially, he says these boys used to play with their chimney hats as wickets, they would use umbrellas as bats, and they would have the local cobbler make a ragged ball which was stuffed with rags. And that's how they learned to play cricket. Either ways, what most historians do agree upon is that by the mid-1800s, the game became widely popular among the Parsee youths. And they started to practice regularly in the Maidan in front of Fort George. Maidan basically just means grounds. Now, these young Parsees actually faced a lot of issues in their pursuit of playing and learning cricket. Firstly, the Maidan they played upon, in their own words, was a scene of broken, irregular and rough ground overgrown with coarse grass. Secondly, there would often be little fights that emerged between these two groups, the Muslim dyers and the Parsee cricketers, because eventually the ball would roll over the laid out cloth and the dyers would get angry. So there were some small scuffles that are also recorded within these accounts. And lastly, these young cricketers were actually given quite a tough time by their own community. These included the more orthodox and older members of the community for whom playing cricket was basically just a children's game. And they discouraged and ridiculed all these men who were trying to learn the sport. But numerous accounts mention that these young pioneers kept on playing this game despite all these challenges. And the Parsee community actually went a step forward. They were one of the first communities again in India to adopt another thing the British did, which was to create sports clubs. The first among these was the Orient Cricket Club, formed in 1848. And after this, a slew of clubs followed. Eventually, these local teams began to attract patrons as well, and money started to come in. And at the same time, they now started organizing matches with other local teams and then eventually Europeans as well. Not satisfied with just playing the home ground, some of these clubs, as early as the 1870s, also started to plan tours of England and wanted to play local clubs all over England. The tours did get delayed, and in fact, the tours got a very mocking reaction from the British press in India as well as the press in England itself. I've planned another video regarding those, so stay tuned. And soon afterwards, we see the entrance of Maharajas and princely states within this newfound love for cricket and patronage of cricket. But one thing that's evident is that cricket in the Indian subcontinent initially was a game just for the rich and some of the middle class. It was much later that some of the less privileged actually began to enter the picture. If you want a more in-detail video of how these sports clubs managed to go forward or any other sporting videos, let me know in the comments below and I'll be happy to make those.